Hello, my name is Andrew Dobson. I'm the head of English at Exeter School, and I just want to talk to you very briefly about why you should study, or why your son or daughter should study English literature with us at Exeter School. I can't think of anything more important in some senses than books. Reading is a hugely important activity to take part in. The novel was invented about 250 years ago for one real specific purpose, and that was to see the world from somebody else's eyes. And I think in a world which you might say is becoming in some senses increasingly polarised, that skill, which is better defined perhaps as empathy, that skill of looking at the world from another person's eyes is so vital. If, for example, you're talking about someone like Stanley Kowalski in Streetcar Named Desire, there are many aspects of Stanley's character which are repugnant to a modern audience. But if you discover that Stanley is a man who took part in the Salerno landings in the Second World War, you start to realise that his somewhat explosive behaviour isn't altogether something that perhaps we would continually criticise, in the sense that we're not going to admire it, but you can see that it comes from somewhere that's very understandable. And developing that skill to look at people, to look at situations, to look at ideas and see them in the round in a complex way, I think is one of the things that our pupils learn the most by studying English at A level. It's also about communicating. As we know, the world is full of information these days, and it's only really through reading books and reading regularly that you learn the ability to sort of get on top of, if you like, to assimilate a large, to use a technical term, a large kind of corpus of data. I mean, because that's essentially what a book is. And if you can't do that, really, you become, in my view, you become a little more sort of gullible. And so to get on top of a book like Frankenstein, to know it, to know what you want to talk about, also importantly to know what you don't want to talk about, is such a useful skill. And it's the kind of skill that pupils take forward into all kinds of different areas. Law is a particularly good area, and I'm myself I'm a former solicitor, but also university in general, doctors, anything really that involves processing, thinking, and in particular, I think, arguing about information. The final thing I would talk about is communicating in a written sense. We write essays in English, and essays are about expressing your views in a complex way of a complex topic. The great thing about English literature is many other things as well. It's politics, it's philosophy, it's history, and all those things, all those ideas, those ways of looking at the world come into the study of English literature. And being able to write really effective arguments and essays about Frankenstein or War of the Worlds or Huckleberry Finn or Heart of Darkness, or whichever text you end up studying, is such a useful skill. And again, it's something you take into the world, and something that hopefully will allow you to kind of define more clearly the world in which you live, and also, I think, what your place in that world is. I'm Andrew Dobson, Head of English. It's good to talk to you. Thank you very much. I'm here today with Eleanor, who is one of our pupils studying A-level English literature in the Upper Sixth. And Eleanor, I just want to ask you a bit about your studies. Firstly, why would you say that reading is an important thing for pupils and indeed parents to do?
I think it's a really good way to expand your horizons, not just of English, but of everything, of different cultures, in lots of different subjects that you do at school, not limited to English literature. I also think it helps you to learn to handle a large amount of information at the same time. If you have to work your way through a big book, you have to remember everything that's gone on, and that's a really important skill when you get later on in your school life. And also it's just fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you there. Could you tell us a little bit about what you've been studying, obviously last year and this year?
Yeah, so in lower sixth we do 2 novels, and basically the essay task is to compare them in the exam. So we did Heart of Darkness and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Joseph Conrad and Mark Twain, which are a really interesting comparison because they are kind of very different cultures. It's a transatlantic comparison, but they have a lot of similar themes in there, so there's a lot of interesting stuff to get into. And then we also do coursework, so lots of different classes do lots of different things. But I did As You Like It and Brideshead Revisited, which again is a really interesting comparison to make because on the surface they're very, very different texts. Yeah, and lots of poetry as well.
Great, excellent. And if you look back on the last year, and I know you're going to study English at university as well. Nostalgically, perhaps a couple of years' time, when you think back to these glorious days of studying English literature at Exeter School, what do you think you're going to pick out as the things you most enjoyed?
I think one of the best things for me has been just the class atmosphere. I think people think of English very much as a subject where you sit in libraries and write essays on your own. But actually, A-level English is probably quite different to how you think of English at GCSE at the moment. We do so much debate and discussion. I think it makes you more confident because you learn to think through your arguments verbally, which is a really important skill. So I think that's been one of the sort of revelations about A-level English, even though I did enjoy it at GCSE too. It's a lot less formulaic than GCSE. There's a lot more of that opportunity to just express yourself.
And final question for me. I like writing essays personally. I find that quite interesting, and I was talking to my Upper Sixth earlier about why the essay was invented in France in the sort of mid to late 16th century. It's a way to kind of express your way of thinking about the world. And what have you learned from writing essays and coursework and that sort of thing, and the other writing you've done in the last year and a half or so?
I think it makes you more articulate in general. I think if you have to think through an argument as a kind of protracted thing that sort of begins simple and gets more complex, I think it really trains you in some good thought processes that you can use in a lot of different situations in life. It's a very broad skill to have. I also think English is really good at training for uncertainty. I think a lot of subjects we do at school kind of teach you to believe that there's always a right and wrong answer, but doing essays means that in one homework, in just one question, you're going to explore so many different aspects of that question, and you're going to come to terms with the fact that there probably isn't a right answer, and that's a really, really interesting thing to get into.
Excellent, thank you, Eleanor. Scott Fitzgerald said that the definition of a genius is someone who can hold two conflicting ideas in their mind at any given moment, and to some extent, that's what we do in English at A-level at Exeter School. Thank you very much.